Hello, and welcome to our presentation on how to use generative AI to assist you in capture management. I'm Bruce Feldman, Principal Consultant at Lohfeld Consulting Group, and the lead instructor for our training on using generative AI to do proposal work. I'm here today with Christian Ferreira, CEO and co-founder of Procurement Sciences AI. I've been doing business development, capture, and proposal work for over 30 years. So I'm here today speaking from the user side with some thoughts on the what, how, and why of using Gen AI to do capture work with observations and lessons learned. My focus today is on how we're using AI-assisted tools on the Procurement Sciences platform to facilitate capture best practices in a training environment. Today, we'd like to discuss how we provide that training, lessons we have learned, and information on the platform itself. Now, I'm wondering, probably like many of you, if Gen AI is ever going to start to slide down from the peak of the hype cycle where it is today. I've seen articles where people write that Gen AI's impact will be as profound on our society as electricity, computers, the internet, you name it. Every day brings announcement of new tools and features that multiply the power of Gen AI. I think the most obvious and impressive feature of Gen AI is its ability to write new content. Some of the Gen AI tools write beautifully with well-formed paragraphs, perfect syntax, grammar, and punctuation, and with user-selected tone, style, and output. That capability has us immediately entranced with how Gen AI can help us write proposals faster, better, and cheaper. After having led several Gen AI training classes where the students and I all work hands-on with Gen AI tools designed for proposal work, I can say that I'm a believer. But it raises an immediate question. Is Gen AI an equally powerful tool for business development and capture management activities that are less about synthesizing and packaging a compliant, responsive, and compelling case, and more about formulating the ideas that drive the win before the RFP is in hand? In my opinion, generative AI can be hugely helpful in researching and synthesizing ideas that will hugely value add to capture managers. Some general areas where generative AI can help capture are shown in the chart. As we progress through capture, the capture manager typically provides corporate leadership with ongoing reviews that justify continued investment in the opportunity. Generative AI can pull together information from disparate sources to help the capture manager present an accurate picture of the state of the capture and the prospects for winning. Generative AI can also be a valuable tool to help capture managers develop a win strategy that guides decision-making and investment throughout the capture. Generative AI can identify potential proposal and execution risks and recommend mitigation strategies that improve proposal scores and reduce the offeror's financial and performance exposure. Generative AI can reduce the time that capture managers and other members of the capture team spend on identifying and compiling sources of information and then creating content needed for key capture artifacts. We estimate a potential cost savings of up to 30% in reduced capture cost, a savings that can be applied to bidding more, securing the confidence that these cost savings won't hurt your bid quality. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss a use case where we at Lohfeld have prototyped a set of prompts using the prompt technique known as chain of thought to facilitate workshops for a capture management best practice called strength-based solutioning. The workshop starts with basic customer and opportunity intelligence and uses Gen AI as a partner and workshop facilitation tool for business developers, capture managers, solution architects, and subject matter experts. AI-assisted strength-based solutioning drives out a preliminary set of strength statements for your proposal before the RFP is released. The Gen AI is used to suggest ideas, capture workshop comments and changes, and progress through the strength-based solutioning process. We'll also give you a demonstration by Procurement Sciences Christian Ferreira that highlights new features in the platform to support both proposal development and capture. And this workshop concept is done in a client-tenant environment, so your proprietary data and private data is secured, protected from both corruption and leakage. Generative AI has impressive analytical and research capabilities, especially for information present in the training set used to train the AI. That information is supplemented with information from local and internet data sources using semantic search, a technique called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. The analytical capabilities present in Gen AI enable us to use it as more than just a tool for writing draft content. We'll discuss Retrieval Augmented Generation in a few minutes. Let's take a moment to contrast the difference in types of tasks performed in capture versus proposal development. In my opinion, they are profoundly different cognitive processes, and each has work components that can be done faster, better, and cheaper if we use AI as a tool. Capture work tends to be less structured. It's more about gathering information, building a strategy, influencing the customer, and developing a solution such that our proposal ultimately receives the winning score. At Lohfeld, we say that best informed wins, because in capture, we apply information not only to build a solution, but also to shape the solicitation and assess competing offerings. Capture is largely about research and synthesis. So while it may be challenging to judge the quality of result and therefore return on investment, I think you'll find that Gen AI in the hands of a trained solution architect can significantly reduce the time and cost of many capture activities. In contrast, proposal work tends to be more structured because ideally, we have inputs such as a draft or final RFP and a preliminary solution. In proposal development, our focus is on presenting our case in a way that is compliant, responsive, and compelling. The application of Gen AI to proposal work is obvious because Gen AI is so good at writing and because you can guide the Gen AI to write in the structure and style you want, whether through user prompts or through the AI's large language model fine-tuning, or some combination of both. Gen AI's creativity is apparent in that we can use it for much more than research. We can harness its ability to speculate, to provoke thought on how a customer might choose to buy and how he might choose to respond. We can then have human experts evaluate and fuse Gen AI sourced ideas with human sourced ideas and use the Gen AI to capture the synthesis of the two. For research, we can use retrieval augmented generation to pull in external information to supplement the training information in the foundation model. RAG lets you pull information from local corporate knowledge base or from the internet, mining those sources for information from solicitations, award notifications, past proposals, debriefs, corporate offerings, competitor websites, and other content. This information allows you to build a background for forecasting pre-RFP how the customer might choose to structure an upcoming solicitation. Alternatively, some platforms may choose to fine-tune a generative AI's large language model, incorporating your proprietary data to accomplish the same outcome. The performance and cost trade-off between using RAG at one end of the spectrum and fine-tuning at the other end of the spectrum will be critical to your selection of a generative AI platform. Gen AI can be applied to that same data set to speculate on likely proposal response content that we can begin to collect in advance of the RFP. Gen AI can be applied to estimate specifics of the solicitation, such as evaluation criteria, proposal structure, performance requirements, staffing, and similar content. Now, this is not to say that Gen AI is an oracle. Rather, it is a partner tool that the capture manager, solution architect, and subject matter experts can use for its analytical and creative capabilities to develop inputs that they can then review, edit, add to, and delete. These revised inputs can then be fed back into the Gen AI for deeper insight into the solicitation. I'm going to describe a capture management use case for the capabilities of Gen AI shown in bold on this chart. This use case is a Lohfeld best practice called strength-based solutioning. From the perspective of the business developer, capture manager, and solution architect, there are a lot of ways that generative AI can help create the artifacts that give you a good, strong feed into proposal development once your RFP is released. Investing in these activities before the RFP release bolsters your probability of win, even if the requirements and evaluation in the RFP ultimately deviate from the estimates that you developed during the capture phase. As I'll discuss in the use case coming up, a robust capture also enables your capture team to engage with the customer in meaningful ways, to gain insight into their priorities, hot button issues, and their understanding and perspective on the key requirements of the solicitation. This engagement opens the door to meaningful discussions with customers on how your company capabilities can meet their requirements and how they might want to adjust their requirements, for example, to reward flexibility and innovation. Getting an early start during capture with the help of generative AI also allows you to get ahead of the most stressing long pole requirements of the solicitation by forecasting key personnel requirements, staffing mix, facility needs, and customer appetite for new solutions. This is the architecture for the generative AI platform from Procurement Sciences that we're using for our training and clients. Each tenant has its own store of knowledge, uploaded files, and custom prompts, as well as access to the Lohfeld prompt library. It's worth noting that each tenant environment includes an engagement success manager, system administration support, and access to AI-trained proposal professionals. You don't want to make the mistake of assuming that a training class for a handful of your people is enough to bootstrap your way to success. The use case for AI-assisted capture that I want to discuss is strength-based solutioning, a Lohfeld technique that is one of the many activities that should be an area of emphasis for every bidder in the capture phase. It's a methodology for coming up with ideas for strengths that you incorporate into your proposal to boost your proposal score, but it must be done pre-RFP, preferably 6 to 12 months before RFP release. That extended timeline allows for customer engagements where you can discuss your solution ideas, solicit feedback, and iterate on your ideas. The formula for strength-based solutioning requires pulling together and analyzing customer information and then correlating it with company capabilities. Obviously, this requires access to company proprietary data, which of course rules out using public and open AI platforms. I'm going to describe using Gen AI to facilitate a strengths-based solutioning workshop with solution architect and SMEs. Now, this is the structure of the output you get from strength-based solutioning. As we teach in our strength-based winning class, you start well in advance of the RFP, modeling the expected evaluation criteria and principal functional requirements for the program work statement. You then identify the critical, emotionally charged issues called hot buttons that the customer associates with the evaluation criteria and functional requirements. From there, you identify solution features, benefits, and proof points that will make your proposal feature-rich and score strengths. Generative AI can help with the creative aspects of each of these steps to get you out of the box, stimulate innovation, and identify and mitigate risks. Now, here is a complex prompt for using generative AI to facilitate a workshop to develop your strength-based solutions. The workshop is envisioned as being run by your lead solution architect and supported by the opportunity business developer, capture manager, and subject matter experts. Each prompt implements a step in the process of building out the table in the previous chart. At each step in the workshop, we ask the generative AI platform for ideas on content. These ideas become a part of the discussion where the attendees submit, add, edit, delete, or park ideas provided by the generative AI and the attendees. The conversational nature of generative AI allows the people in the room to ask follow-up questions and guide the output. Note the extensive use of RAG to query both the corporate knowledge base and, if you wish, the internet. This is key to injecting both customer insight and corporate capability into the solution, while at the same time allowing for new ideas outside the box. So starting at the left side of the chart, the first step in this complex prompt is to use acquisition background, evaluation from criteria from recent solicitations, and other reasonably current documentation to identify potential evaluation criteria that the customer might choose to use in the upcoming solicitation. Again, the Gen AI generates an initial draft output. The people in the room review, change, amend, add to that output, and then we consolidate that output into a single list of prospective evaluation criteria. The next step is to do the same thing with potential functional or top-level requirements for a PWS. And once again, the Gen AI initiates an initial list. The people in the room review the list and make whatever changes they deem necessary. We use acquisition background, PWS from recent solicitations, and similar content to guide the Gen AI to identify those potential functional requirements. We consolidate the evaluation criteria and potential requirements into a single list. The next step is to use the Gen AI to identify hot buttons that are mapped into each of the evaluation criteria and requirements. Again, we provide acquisition background, history, information from industry day, and other sorts of supplementary information. We ingest that through RAG. And then again, the people in the room, BD, capture manager, solution architect, and SMEs, review that list of hot buttons in the mapping to again come up with a final version to act from. The next step is then to begin the solutioning process using the Gen AI to recommend potential features that satisfy the evaluation criteria and requirements, meet the standards of the hot button, at the same time offer benefits that exceed the evaluation criteria to potentially score strengths. And once again, we draw on the corporate knowledge management system, potential past performance, corporate capabilities and offerings, a strengths registry if you have one, in order to motivate the Gen AI to provide meaningful solution features to satisfy those requirements. The next step then is to use the Gen AI in much the same fashion to quantify benefits, identify applicable corporate experience, and suggest proof points to make our case credible and trustworthy, and then together generate strength statements, which in our proposal narrative highlight our capability and will be scored as strengths by the evaluators. We can also use that same output to identify gaps in our capability, sections of the solicitation where we expect or suspect we may not have sufficient strengths to score. so we can make teaming decisions and do make-buy investment decisions. We can also build a proposal strengths budget with that, identifying how many strengths we think we need in order to overcome our competitors, win the solicitation. Now, retrieval augmented generation supplements the body of information we have in our corporate knowledge repository or the internet and provide that information as input to the Gen AI large language model. I've mentioned retrieval augmented generation several times now in the presentation. It's one of the best documented techniques for infusing that information that is outside of the training set of the generative AI's large language model. I want to make clear that access to the corporate knowledge or the internet happens before the prompt goes to the large language model where the generative AI magic happens. It's worth noting that the use of RAG does not mean that your generative AI is communicating with the internet. RAG is better described as generating content that is combined with your prompt and then input to the large language model. If you're wondering how RAG works, it employs a technique from natural language processing called semantic search. At the risk of oversimplifying, semantic search takes your request and looks for content that is closely aligned in meaning. It is not a lexical or word search. At the end of the strength-based solutioning workshop, you have a populated table of ideas for potential strengths for your proposal, with each strength mapped to an evaluation criterion or requirement. If your goal is winning and not just bidding, especially on best value opportunities, then you have to offer strengths that will score. A generic AI-generated response that doesn't take your company and teammates' capabilities into account can be compliant and responsive, but by definition, it will almost never be compelling. Now, developing your solution early offers obvious benefits. You can direct investment, guide teaming discussions, develop staffing profiles, numerous other capture functions. In my opinion, one underappreciated aspect of early solution development is that it gains you the time and substantive content for customer discussions. Vetting your solution with the customer enables you to both time your solution for a maximum score and also may open the customer's eyes to alternative ways to satisfy and exceed their requirements. Generative AI helps you create the content you need to vet your solution with the customer. You can have the AI list questions that a customer might ask so you can prepare, format your solution ideas into white papers and evaluation criteria and requirements, and leave behind questions and other content. When you get the feedback from the customer, you can then iterate your solution again with the assistance of the generative AI. So in conclusion, we believe that generative AI can help you improve the speed and reduce the cost of capture, as well as expedite proposal development. My colleague, Christian Ferreira, will now demonstrate some of the newest features of the Procurement Sciences bidding intelligence system to support capture and proposal.
Thanks, Bruce. That was very informative. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian Ferreira. I am the founder and CEO of Procurement Sciences AI. We are a leading generative AI software development company that focuses on BD, capture, and proposal applications for government and commercial contractors. Our systems are built using some of the same algorithms that Bruce mentioned, specifically around RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation. What that allows is for our algorithms to protect your data and your data privacy, but also while allowing you to use your own files to get more insights out of the AI. Our systems don't require costly model training to get started and can be rapidly deployed so your teams can find immediate value. So I'm going to start by giving you a demo of the automated bidding intelligence system. One thing to note is there's no right or wrong way to use this system. It is very flexible. You can perform a wide range of tasks using the different AI-powered tools, such as finding opportunities, evaluating opportunities for bid, no bid, performing market, competitor, and agency research, rapidly drafting proposals, RFIs, RFPs, fine-tuning your proposals, reviewing your proposals for compliance, readability, completeness, and even preparing for post-submission oral presentation prep, debrief analysis, and even much more. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to show you a quick demo of some of the different tools, some of the different ways to use this system, specifically around capture. So to start, what I can do, the bidding intelligence system, again, allows you to point to your files. So I can point directly to my files in my SharePoint, or I can upload my files. Here I'm pointing to a list of all of my contacts. And I'm simply going to ask the AI a question to help me find data. So the question I asked it was, what contacts do we have at the Army that specialize in AI? So it's looking through all of our information to build the answer. After it builds the answer, it's going to show me which files it actually used. This way I can verify the accuracy. So this is a conversational AI. What that means is that you're able to actually conversate back and forth with the artificial intelligence, meaning that the deeper you go into your conversation, the stronger it's going to get. So here, the next use case, I'm simply asking it to help me draft an email. I'm telling it some basic information, such as where the industry event is at, who the target is, which is a procurement officer, and then trying to tell them what the objective is. So here I'm asking the AI to help me build a way to actually approach this procurement officer at this industry event, inviting them to talk about some new AI breakthroughs. Next, again, it's conversational, meaning that I can keep going deeper. So I can say, make the email more detailed, make it more inviting. I can change the tone, I can change the style, I can change the format. Next, I can even go as far as asking the AI to help me create a talking plan so that when I do talk to this procurement officer, I know exactly what sort of topics, as well as talking points to actually touch on while communicating. Now again, you could keep asking follow-up questions to modify it the way you like, or you could take this, you could export it and start to fine-tune it in your own words. Some other ways, I can come in here and I can actually point to my data again. So this time I'm going to point to some recent industry day event reports that we have that our capture managers have collected. And now I'm just going to ask about some recent notes. So again, specifically around what did we talk about Army procurement officers with? What information can it extract? What pain points did we jot down last time we talked with them? That when I go to this industry event, I'm ready to go. I can talk to them exactly where we left off. Another use case, which is very common, is just loading a simple RFP. So here I'm loading JETS 2, which is about a 300-page solicitation. And now traditionally, I would have to read through this entire document. Now instead, what I can do is before I have to read through it, I can use the AI to quickly sift through the document. So simply I'm asking the AI natural language questions, just like I would ask someone for an answer. So I'm asking it, what are the task areas? Very quickly, it tells me the 12 different task areas. Then I can go deeper. I can ask the AI to actually help me summarize some of these task areas. So I can say, okay, task area 3 or task area 4, summarize it, create me a list of key bullet points. So now very quickly, you can see it summarizes that task area, generates me the response. Again, I could go deeper and I could tell the AI to make this more informative, to highlight certain aspects. I could even tell it to analyze and help me strategize how to respond. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to select a prompt out of the prompt library. And I'm going to go ahead and select the compliance matrix prompt. Now from here, it's as simple as coming in, selecting the task area, the section L, the section M, whatever text I want to actually shred through. I can paste in, and now very quickly it's going to build me this compliance matrix. Now what's unique about using an AI chat like this to build a compliance matrix is it gives you the flexibility, where I'm telling it in columns 4 and columns 5 to identify liability risks, and then also to go in there and identify some ways to respond to these actual requirements, some tips. So generative AI allows you to be very creative as far as how you talk to the system, what you tell it to do, and how you tell it to structure the data. Now next what I'm going to do is go even further. I'm going to tell it to brainstorm a list of 10 different ideas that could actually differentiate us from our competitors. So now very quickly, using the conversational history of this task area, it helps me start to brainstorm 10 different ideas. And again, I could keep going deeper and deeper into these different ideas to extract further insights. Another common use case around capture is I can come in here and I can actually search through my past performances. So I can do a past performance search where I could either select a subset of files or my entire repository. Then I can simply start to ask questions. So here I'm asking the repository of data, what AI projects have we done before and with what agencies? So very quickly the AI goes through all that data. It identifies what agencies we worked with, what were the projects, gives me the data citation so I can verify where the information actually came from. I can even dig in deeper by launching the resource to open up directly to that section. Now again, it's conversational, meaning that I can come over and ask it a follow-up question. So the follow-up question I told it was, I want you to format this as a table, and I'm telling it exactly how the table should be laid out. So I'm telling it column 1 should be the agency, column 2 should be the type of service, and column 3 should be the value proposition. Now I'm telling the AI to use that data to actually build me an executive summary. Now from here, again, I could keep going further. I could tell it to make this longer, make this more detailed. I can tell it here to make it more technical and include some bullet points within the executive summary to make it easier to read. There's really no limitation as far as how you can tell the generative AI to do different things to the text that it generates. But ultimately remember that the AI is designed to get you the first 80-90% of the way there. The final 10% is where you should take this, export it, and start to modify it by putting your own tune to it. So next what I'm going to do is actually do some teaming partner searches. So this time I changed the AI to look at my files, and now it's looking at my teaming partners, people that we've worked with before. Now I'm simply going to come in here and I'm going to start to search through our teaming partners. I'm telling the AI I need a veteran-owned small business to work with us as a subcontractor. They need to have AI experience, and I'm just asking the AI who it actually recommends. So it's looking through all the reports, all the capability statements we have from our teaming partners, and it's recommending who it believes is most relevant to fill in for this. I could keep going further and ask it questions. What I'm actually going to do is just ask it, what are the key points about CyberEdge AI and why it recommended them? So very quickly, it's telling me about their specialty in AI-enabled cybersecurity. It's telling me how they're a VOSB, also an SDVOSB, telling me the key topics about them around their past performance. Next, I can come in here and actually do some competitive intelligence. So what I can do is I can select my competitor reports, which are all the different reports I have of my competitors. Then I can narrow it down to a subset or even a single competitor. Then what I can do is I can come in here, I can say, based on this competitor, build me a SWOT analysis. I could say, analyze their capabilities, analyze their competencies. I could say, build me a market analysis. I'm also telling it here to build me a Porter's 5 Forces analysis. So ultimately, it can go in there, it can analyze the data it has about one of these competitors. You can also point it to a competitor's website to scrape information about them in real time. And then you can tell it any sort of strategic analysis to perform against them. Next, what I'm going to do is come in here, much more of an advanced use case. You can actually give the AI your different roles of your different team members within your BD team. So I'm telling the AI I have 6 weeks to respond. I'm telling it I need a solutions architect, 2 proposal writers, and a proposal manager. I'm telling it that the solicitation is about Army machine learning and AI, and I'm asking it to build me a team based on our core competencies and which of our proposal managers, proposal writers, capture managers have the most experience. So very quickly it goes in there, it helps me build the roster, and it gives me the breakdown of who it selected and why. Then further I can say, okay, I have 6 weeks, so now build me a 6-week response plan, highlighting all the major tasks. And very quickly it does exactly that. Now again, if I don't like this, I can tell it what tasks I actually use, so it's more straightforward to my company. I can tell it to make it more detailed, I can tell it to summarize it. Now let's say we do want to respond. So at this point, I can launch one of our other tools, which we call IntelliBid. IntelliBid allows you to come in here and actually respond to a proposal. So what I can do here is I can select the actual RFI or proposal I'm working on. So now I have my requirements on the left. In the middle, I have my actual draft. So what I can do here is give it some custom information. So I'm telling it to respond using an active voice, highlight our past experiences. I can tell it my differentiators, my strengths, my themes. Then I can come in here and tell it the agency name, the type of system or service. And then simply I can go in here and start to respond using the AI. So before I respond, there's two options here. One, I can use just its training data, or two, I can actually come in here and select the past proposals that I know are most relevant to help guide its answers. So now it's going to ground its answers on things that my company's actually done before. So I can respond to a single requirement at a time, I can respond to an entire section, which I'm doing here, or I can actually respond to entire documents at once. So I'm going to tell the AI, I highlighted 3 requirements, I'm telling it to respond. Now very quickly it's going to start to build out responses for each of these different requirements one by one. And then all the information that it's using is being grounded consistently by actual past performances and past documents that we've used before. Now from here I could go on, I could do some more. So again, I could highlight another subset of requirements, an entire section, or just a single requirement. I could also come in here and tell it to explain these requirements, give me tips and suggestions, help me strategize. But again, I highlighted 6 more requirements and told it to respond. And now very quickly it's going to respond to each one of those one by one. Now, once it finishes building those first draft responses, it's very important not to try and submit these. At this point, it just saved you a huge amount of time. Now take that time savings, go back in there and build in an even stronger response. So I can highlight the text as far as editing, and I can tell it a bunch of different options, from summarize to explain to expand. I can also come over here and tell it to turn this into a continuous narrative. So it's taking these bullet points and turning it into multiple paragraphs instead. So now I can delete the previous text. I have a more comprehensive requirement response. And again, I can come back in here and continue to use the AI tools. This time I'm going to tell it to continue writing. So it's going to take those couple paragraphs and continue to writing by adding more detail, more content to that requirement response. Now I can insert it into my draft, remove those previous paragraphs, and then continue with building out that first draft pink team. You could also use the AI chat to come over and tell it any sort of custom settings. So I could tell it to come over here and make it more compelling, change the tone, align the tone, change the style, etc. Now the last thing I want to show you is using a tool called Smart Check. Smart Check allows a proposal writer, or if you're a capture manager or part of the BD team and you get assigned as a reviewer, you can come in here and use Smart Check to perform an unbiased review. What that means is you can feed it the requirement, you can feed it in your response, and ultimately it's going to help you be your co-pilot to very quickly check over your response and give you some feedback to help you maximize your score. So it's important to note that you don't need to take all the feedback the AI gives you, but it is good to review it, as the AI can go very deep very quickly and analyze multiple things. So it can help you analyze for compliance, it can give you reasoning, it can help you check for readability levels, completeness scores, overall evaluation scores. It can also help you come in and check for potential risks in your response, ways to differentiate yourself, and then a list of overall scoring improvement tips. So very quickly, the AI can provide you a very comprehensive report against your response using that requirement. Then I can keep going. I can feed in additional requirements, additional task areas to have it go ahead and review. When I'm done, I could export this as a report. I could give it to the proposal writer. I could also come in, modify it in the text editor, highlighting just the things I think are most important. And then lastly, what you can do is you can actually take the text that it generated, feed it back into the AI, and have it give you a second variant, taking into account any of the feedback that it suggested for you. So I can copy it, I can bring it over, feed it back into the AI, and now the AI very quickly is going to generate me a new draft to that requirement response using that new feedback that it incorporated. Then from here, I could add it back into my draft and then continue through with editing, modifying, building out that final draft all the way to submission. So that was a quick demo of the bidding intelligence system and some of the different ways you can use generative AI to find unique insights and add efficiency into your daily operations. To learn more, you can go to the LoFeldConsulting.com website. Lohfeld Consulting offers proposal and capture professional training courses that are specifically geared towards using generative AI safely and effectively. They also have a YouTube and a Vimeo where you can view more information. You can also view hundreds of different blogs and insight articles directly on the LoFeldConsulting.com website. Additionally, Lohfeld Consulting has over 150 AI-trained proposal experts that can not only help your companies learn how to safely and effectively use AI, but also help you respond to opportunities. Lastly, the Lohfeld AI Proposal Development Center allows your organizations to quickly sign up and start to use the benefits of generative AI today. So now we can open up the floor to any questions you might have about any of the content you saw today or anything related to generative AI in capture and proposal operations.
What lessons have you learned from helping your customers use these processes and tools to support capture and proposal development?
Yeah, Christian, let me go ahead and take a first crack at that, and then you can correct all my errors for me, please. The main thing we're learning so far is that if you interact with generative AI in the way it's optimized for, which is as an assistant or a help, not an oracle who produces results that you then rely upon, it can really enhance your productivity. It can do a lot of things very, very well, very quickly, although you still have to take ownership of the final product. You have to check the facts. You have to make sure the case is made the way you desire. So those are kind of the essential aspects of, I think, of using Gen AI, the principal lesson learned we've gained.
Yeah, I agree, Bruce. I think it's all about the efficiency gains. There's undeniable gains that you can get from using this kind of new era of technology. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to the people using it as a tool to kind of build the best final product, right? Allow the AI to help you with the efficiency, but all those efficiency gains you should take and ultimately roll back into building your best possible proposal submission.
Would you discuss the AI-assisted capture management's proposal risks and limitations and how these can be mitigated?
Kind of building on some of the material in the presentation. Again, a couple important lessons emerge. One is that if your company is going to commit to trying to use or using Gen AI, which I think most companies will, you really need to have an effective way to bootstrap your program. You can't just send a couple people to a training class, go buy a platform, and off you go, ready to go to work. You have to be prepared to invest some time and effort in bringing your people up to speed on how to use AI effectively. That's, I think, is absolutely key. Even as a productivity enhancement tool, just learning your way around the capabilities of the platforms, how they work, how they're, the different aspects, really how to use the platform capabilities in a way that best emulates your proposal development or capture workflow, I think really becomes key to getting the most value out of it. At the same time, doing things that run contrary to how Gen AI works can, create risks for you. So you need to check your facts, for instance, at the end of the day. You need to make sure that you're not just generating generic content, that you really have company capabilities that differentiate you well embedded in your responses. So those are some of the risks you have to really deal with. And they're not really risks in the sense of causing you damage if you operate on the premise that the AI, again, is your partner and a tool, but it's not, the answer machine.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest thing is don't just use it as an easy button where it can automate a lot of the work for you and it looks very powerful, but there is limitations, right? And I think the biggest one is the information, where you still need to verify the information. It's going to guide you where it got the answers from. But at the end of the day, it's the actual user, the operator, the human that is going to be the one supervising what the AI is producing, right? So it's really up to the human to go in there, identify the information's accurate, make sure it aligns to their company, and then fact check it ultimately to ensure that what they're submitting is actually what their company is able to perform and able or has done before.
Great, thanks to both of you. Another question we have, what are some of the potential issues regarding AI and controlled unclassified information, CUI, or other restricted information?
Yes, I think that is a big issue right now. It's not just, CUI data, but ultimately it's all company data where there's a lot of free public tools out there. A lot of people are using their information from their company, feeding it into these tools. What these tools do is they don't retrain in real time. So ultimately, right off the bat, it's not evident that you just leaked a bunch of information. What they do is they take all this information, they put it into a separate database, and they train their future models on it. So it really is a problem across the board right now where people don't realize these models are actually taking their data, using it for training. When you move into like the CUI level, that's a whole nother level because it's government controlled information. So same thing, anyone accessing government controlled information, your cyber teams, your CISOs, they should be dictating how you maintain that information, how you're storing it, where you can use it. For any sort of AI system, it's very rare for a system, any sort of public system, I can tell you right off the bat, cannot handle CUI data. So if you have a system that can handle CUI data, what that means is it's probably an on-prem deployment into your infrastructure governed by your CISO team, your cyber team. And there's going to be very kind of strict training around how to use it effectively. Short answer is anytime you use any sort of tool in your workforce, you should always be checking with your cyber teams, your CISOs. They'll be giving you the guidance that you need as far as what you can use, what you can't use, and also what information can be kind of put into those systems.
Great. A follow-up question for that. Can you talk a bit about how Procurement Sciences stores proprietary information?
As I mentioned, these large language models, which is really the engine behind the systems, they don't train in real time. So it is a big misconception where people think that these models are constantly learning and growing in real time. That's not the truth. So ultimately, they're all stateless, which means once they're done being trained and you put the lid on top of the model, it doesn't continue to learn. So that's where we use algorithms like Bruce mentioned in his presentation called like RAG, where we can take your company's proprietary information, we can store it in your own private database. It's called the vector database. And then we have algorithms which allow the AI to go into that database and use information to build relevant answers without risking any of your data being made public, used for training larger models or exposed to anyone else in the system.
Thank you. Where do these tools pull the information? Will it give suggestions that competitors may see if they're using a similar software?
So there's a couple different sources. So kind of as Bruce alluded to, there's training data, which is how these models are first kind of trained initially. So those are typically trained on open source information from the internet, usually about 30 to 40% of the entire open source historical internet. So you got to think these large language models right off the shelf are extremely powerful. They're subject matter experts across huge domains. And then obviously that's powerful, but it's not tuned to your company or to government contracting, proposal writing, etc. So that's where that RAG algorithm comes in place, where ultimately you can bring additional data into the system, whether it's from, open source federal APIs, internet searches, scraped websites, uploaded information from your company. Ultimately, there's multiple different sources that you can build on top of. So you take that training data, but then you also supplement it with new information relevant to your company, your mission, your values, how you've responded before, what your actual artifacts and information are.
Thanks, Christian. Is Procurement Sciences AI platform collaborative?
It is. We are building more into it right now. So collaboration is key in proposal writing. So most of our team all came from the government contracting background. We are adding some things in there so it matches more closely to kind of more traditional word processing tools that are cloud-based, where you can work together on an actual document together. So there is kind of further things we're adding into it right now to make it much more of a collaborative platform across the entire life cycle.
Great, thank you. I understand that my data will be siloed and not used to train other companies or groups, but will it continue to learn within my company's vector?
So by default, no. It kind of comes back down to these large language models are stateless, so they don't actually continue to learn. The vector database, it's different than the large language model. We do have algorithms which we're building right now, which do kind of build a ability for it to continue to learn about your company, your users, what you've done in the past, what you've bid on, what you haven't bid on. But by default, large language models do not continue to learn with you. So that is kind of more of a proprietary algorithm that we're working on.
How does one inform or manage the language in AI-generated responses? For example, exclude terms on Lohfeld's legendary list of words to avoid.
Yeah, Bruce, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, sure. So in some of the platforms, you can set up what I would call a system prompt, which becomes a fixed part of your identity inside the system. So you can, for instance, set up a system prompt that says, Gen AI, never use these words. Okay. Or if you want to give it a system prompt that says, I prefer to use these sorts of words. You can say, I want to use verbs that are transitive verbs that take a direct object. And it's a word selection is absolutely essential, especially when you're directing the Gen AI, because words don't mean the same thing. The word list does not mean the same thing as the word summarize, for example. That's an obvious example. But when you want to get a specific output format, you have to pick your verb carefully to direct the Gen AI to do the task you want and not the task you think you want. So what I recommend is, as part of your Gen AI proficiency development, you kind of have to calibrate your language to the Gen AI. You have to get used to how it thinks and talks in response to you, so you can adjust how you instruct it and query and prompt it to do what you need.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. That was a great answer, Bruce. What I would say is, people who haven't used Gen AI before, the easiest way to think about it is just like you would talk to a human and give them feedback, you can do the same exact thing to these Gen AI tools. So most of these Gen AI tools have a generic chat interface on top. They also have kind of more advanced tools, but those chat interfaces, you can tell these AI systems, just like I would tell Bruce, I don't like how you wrote this. I don't want you to include these words. It's just like talking to a human. You talk to this AI and it will automatically correct itself. So the short answer to your question is, you can just give it that list of keywords and say, remove these, never use these up front, and it's going to follow that exact command for whatever it's building for you.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, the large language models that form the creative heart of these Gen AI tools, they are language triggered. They have natural language processing front end and back end, and they create a very detailed and complicated mathematical representation of language and how words are associated with each other. So word selection, especially in your prompt, in your instruction to it, becomes really essential. One of the things we teach is give it lots of context, lots of background on what it is you want to know, but keep your direction in the task relatively short and to the point. So that way the Gen AI has the right kind of language and word associations that steer it to the right place in the model to give you the kind of information and response that you want.
Do either of you have any advice for a team seeking out AI software and what to look for?
I'm sure we both have a lot of advice. Bruce, I'll let you go ahead first, and then I'll chime in.
Well, so one of the things we're doing at Lohfeld right now is looking at doing some benchmarking on comparing AI platforms. We think that's essential, that we understand how they vary, what they can and cannot do, and how well they do it. There's really, I think, very little information out there on the comparative performance and capability of the tools. And the other is there's a tremendous amount of subjectivity because, again, we're judging the way AI manipulates ideas and uses language. So it really becomes, very much a subjective set of elements. But we're going to try to get our arms around that by, looking at some of the tasks, typical tasks a proposal writer or a capture manager might propose, have Gen AI help with, and then compare responses. And then we'll probably do some benchmarking against public platforms as well. Again, not using any proprietary data, but, you want to compare it to the standards, like ChatGPT and the new Google tool called Gemini, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so to piggyback on top of that answer, there's a lot of different kind of factors that play in, right? So obviously price, right? What is your price range? How many people are you trying to get on the platform? Are you trying to use it for just, one or two people? Or are you trying to empower your entire workforce? Do you need an on-prem? Do you need a multi-tenant? That kind of ties into what that total price tag is going to look like. Functionality is big as well, right? There's a lot of AI tools out there right now. Are you trying to use an AI tool just for proposal writing, where there's a bunch of tools popping up? Or are you really trying to automate, the end-to-end process? Do you really want to get into the intricacies of, capture, business development, specifically into government contracting or specifically into commercial contracting? All kind of things to kind of think about, right? There's a lot of tools. The biggest problem we see now is that we were one of the first ones to market. Now there's a whole bunch of tools out there, and all that's going to do is make it more complicated for companies to select the right tool, right? Because there's so many out there. There's a lot of kind of white noise. So just kind of look for people that have been proven, look for people that actually have customers, especially in the government contracting realm. You don't want to be one of those top 5 or 10 customers in the very early days. Very risky, especially if they're using your data, regardless of what they say about data security, privacy, not training. I would probably stay away from trusting a early small company like that until they get kind of the first couple guinea pigs out of the way. So that's kind of my response to it.
Another related question too is, to what extent should you invest when you start to bring Gen AI into your platform, and not just for proposal work, but for really any kind of knowledge worker type task? If I can put a plug in, there are a number of articles out from companies like Gartner and McKinsey on how to bring AI into your enterprise. What's the most effective way to do it? So you might want to be able to do some research, do some searching, and go see what they recommend for your scale and size of enterprise.
Does your software produce a capability matrix? If not, is that on your roadmap?
It does. We have two different tools. So we have a traditional tool where you can just upload and it shreds the document for you. Then we also have it through the AI chat. The biggest difference is through the AI chat, you have a lot more flexibility as far as what you want it to do, because you can be very creative. So typically, requirements or compliance matrix, it's going to be, the requirement number, what the requirement was, what that compliance keyword was, right? That's the most basic level. And you can do that with traditional shredders. You upload, it builds a CSV for you. But when you use the AI kind of chat tools with a custom prompt, it gives you the ability to add on top of that. So you can actually go in there and tell the AI to identify liability risks, help me match to past performances, help me give tips to differentiate my company, tips to respond, things on those lines. So a lot more power when you actually go through the AI chat. But then we also have that traditional way, which is some people just like the kind of traditional pre-AI method, which is upload a document, spit out a CSV, and then go in there and add their finishing touches to it.
Can you talk more about what training you provide if onboarding the software to your team?
So we've got a proposal for onboarding, which we in Procurement Sciences do jointly. We recommend you have a certain size team that engages in the environment with actual proposal data. We have a roughly 3-day training class that's designed to give people a thorough grounding in what generative AI is, what its capabilities are, what its limitations are, and then some fundamentals on how you can use AI-assisted tools, and really from any platform, to support your workflow. Again, be it capture or proposal-related work. At that point there, you're now at a place at the end of that where you can really self-start. But we recommend that in the environment in which you're working, you have some people with you who understand the proposal process very well, and also have some experience using Gen AI to facilitate it, because learning through trial and error can be pretty painful. You need a mentor or two in the environment to help you with that. The onboarding doesn't really need to go much more into documentation and formal training. At least Christian and I would contend that. I think once you reach a certain point on the curve, you self-start. You learn as you go, and you can ascend the curve pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of training classes popping up right now. Very much generic though, right? And that's where it's good to learn the generic information, but if you're using it specifically for government contracting or specifically for proposal, BD capture, that's definitely where, like a partnership with Lohfeld comes in, because they offer that class, that methodology, how to use AI effectively, safely within your teams, specifically for those use cases, versus kind of more the generic kind of mindset of how can I use, a generic tool for just, generic purposes.
Christian, what tools are you aiming to add to the tool that will facilitate capture?
Probably tune in for the next one. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We got a pretty interesting roadmap. For us, our advantage was we were one of the first ones to market. All of our team comes from government contracting, so we understood the pain points very closely. Because of that, we are at the tip of the spear for AI. AI is changing every single week. There's new massive breakthroughs taking place. So for us, we're looking at those every single day and asking ourselves those questions, right? Which is, how can we apply it to the end-to-end workflow that a contractor or government contractor facilitates within that kind of capture proposal BD process? So don't want to share too much of our secret sauce in our roadmap, but there are a lot of exciting, very powerful things coming out in the near future.
Thanks so much for all of your insights and answers to the questions, Bruce and Christian. Thanks.